Hi, welcome to Mrs. Wu's next set of notes. I'm going to start again with a couple of jokes that my kids told me. So my boys are in Cub Scouts right now, and they were telling me this joke that they heard in Cub Scouts where some boys from Boy Scouts from the city were on a camping trip. The mosquitoes were so fierce, the boys had to hide under their blankets to avoid being bitten. Then one of the scouts saw some lightning bugs and said to his friend, "Well, we might as well give up. They're coming after us with flashlights." And then my younger son is really into animals, and he found this joke the other day and shared it with me. Did you hear about the guy who was arrested at the zoo for feeding the pigeons? Well, what's wrong with feeding the pigeons? The problem was he fed them to the lions. All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Let's go ahead and move on with our next set of notes talking about vertex form. And so with vertex form with quadratic functions, we are converting from vertex to standard form. And so what I'm going to start with is we have vertex form right here. And you saw this with our transformations, and then here's standard form. Okay? So with our conversion, what we're going to do, I have written down the steps that you need to follow, and we'll do an example together right here on the other side. So the vertex form, f of x is equal to negative 2, parentheses, x minus 2, quantity squared, plus 5. So our very first step, so I'm just going to mark this as number 1 because it's our first step, is to square that binomial. So we're going to remember that x minus 4 quantity squared is the same thing as x minus 4 times x minus 4. When I square this, distributive property, so x times x is x squared, x times negative 4 is negative 4x, negative 4 times x is negative 4x, negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. My next step is I am going to combine like terms, so I get that trinomial, x squared minus 8x plus 16. And so part 2 says distribute the coefficient of the trinomial. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and take the trinomial that I just created and put it back into vertex form, that function. Okay, and I'm going to rewrite the whole thing. And I'm going to mark it as step number 2. So you know I'm completing step number 2. So f of x is equal to negative 2. Again, we squared this binomial, so it is now x squared minus 8x plus 16 plus 5. I'm distributing my negative 2, so it's going to read negative 2x squared plus 16x minus 32 and plus 5. Drop down that 5. Okay, part 3 says to write the combine like terms. And so actually, by combining like terms, we end up putting it into standard form for number 4. So it is f of x is equal to negative 2x squared plus 16x minus 27. Okay, so you can compare this function to the standard form function. We have the 3 terms. We have ax squared, bx, and c. So those of you that, we can kind of geek out right now with this algebra, more of this algebra that we're doing that I think a lot of us really do enjoy. And that's a lot of this homework. So awesome. Starting with some of these examples, what I have added is to write down the vertex and the axis of symmetry for the quadratic function. We're going to do that first before we convert to standard form. So again, we're going to remember our transformations. We're going to remember that the vertex was, and I'm just going to write this off to the side as a quick reminder, h comma k. You'll have to ask me in class why they use the abbreviations h and k, because it is kind of funny. So anyway, when we look at this equation, we see that h equals negative 2, k equals negative 9. So when I write the vertex, I have negative 2 comma negative 9. The axis of symmetry is our x coordinate, so x equals negative 2. Okay, so I'm not going to leave that there. And so let's go ahead and go through the steps to solve this in vertex form. So we'll go ahead and start by, I'm going to rewrite x, or y equals 5, x plus 2 times x plus 2 minus 9. Now what you can do is you can, as you are multiplying this binomial, squaring the binomial, you can rewrite everything or just kind of add it on at the end like what I did up here in our example. So I'm just going to show you kind of the longer way. So I have and drop down y equals 5, and then I'm going to distribute x times x is x squared, x times 2 is 2x, plus 2x, and then 2 times 2 is plus 4, dropping down everything. So I have y equals 5, combine like terms, and now I distribute my 5, so I have 5x squared plus 20x plus 20 minus 9. I'm here at my last step to write it in standard form, and so all I need to do is combine like terms. So I have y equals 5x squared plus 20x plus 11. Okay, and there it is. I'm going to go ahead and try this one more time. So again, just to kind of recap what I did up here is up here I just took the binomial out and I squared it and got the trinomial, and then I put it back into the equation and then finished it up, which is fine to do. Down here what I did is I squared that binomial, so I multiplied that binomial while it was still in the equation. So all it does, and the difference is maybe a little bit less writing up here, but you have to be careful that you remember to recopy everything from the original Vertex form. So let's go ahead and do 2 as well. And so I'm going to, again, start with Vertex form. I'm going to just write down that h equals positive 4, k equals positive 7. And so we have 4 comma 7. Axis of symmetry is the x-coordinate, so x equals 4. Okay, you need to have x equals for it to be correct. Then let's go ahead and I'm going to take my equation y equals negative 3, the binomial, and I'm going to go ahead and expand that binomial so we see it as a product of 2 binomials. So x minus 4 times x minus 4 equal to, and then I'm going to go ahead and square. So x times x is x squared, x times negative 4 is negative 4x, negative 4 times x is negative 4x, negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16, and then I'm going to keep dropping down everything else. I'm going to combine like terms inside my parentheses. So I have x squared minus 8x plus 16, drop down plus 7. Now I distribute y equals negative 3 x squared plus 24x minus 48, drop down plus 7. The last step, we combine like terms, and then as we do this, we write it in standard form. So negative 3x squared plus 24x minus 41. Number 3, we are going to go ahead and do together the next time I see you in class, okay? So hopefully you did these examples along with me. Then let's flip it over to the back. On the back, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be graphing, and as this remains in Vertex form, okay? So we're going to graph it this way. When we are graphing, the only thing that we need to do is identify the zeros in Vertex. Now, I will tell you, we could go ahead and substitute this function into our graphing calculator and graph it that way, but unfortunately that's not the point. Our point is to do this algebraically. So when you are doing this for homework and for your test, you need to be showing your work. So let's start with the vertex. I think the vertex is a little bit easier. So we'll go ahead and pull out what h equals and what k equals. So a reminder that h, we take the opposite, so it's positive 3 and k is negative 4. And so I can go ahead and say the vertex is 3, negative 4. And so we're going to go ahead and box that in because when you are doing this for your homework, that'll make things very easy. So I'm going to mark 3, negative 4 on my graph, and then we're going to label the point. Okay, so just like, gosh, it was earlier, a few notes ago, where you had to sketch the graph and label the point, same thing. Next, we're going to go ahead and find the zeros. The way that we're going to find our zeros, there's a couple different ways that you can do this, but we are going to work with completing the square. You could go ahead and convert this into standard form and then factor to solve that way. Okay, but I think completing the square when it's already right here will go pretty quickly. So I'm just going to write in here that we are doing this by completing the square. So when we are completing the square, we are solving for x, so we're going to put 0 in for f of x. So when I rewrite this, it's 0 and then parentheses, x minus 3 quantity squared minus 4. Our goal is to solve for x, so we have to get x by itself. So I'm going to start by adding 4 to both sides. Remember, this is a step you do not have to show. You could just write 4 equals and then x minus 3 quantity squared. To keep solving for x, we have to get rid of this square. So the inverse of squaring is square root. By square root one side, we square root the other. The square root of 4 is positive or negative 2, equal to x. Oops, it's going to be a minus. X minus 3. And we are now at our last step to solve for x. So to get x by itself, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I end up with, and then this is a step that I'm going to show you you don't have to do, but I'm doing it for the sake of notes. 3 plus 2, which is 5. You could just write x equals 5. And then 3 minus 2, which is 1. So again, you can write just x equals 1. I'm going to recap and write my zeros. I do want this written out for your homework where you're labeling zeros, 5 comma 0, 1 comma 0. We're going to box this in or circle so it's easy to read and find. And then we're going to plot these points. So I have 5, 0, and I have 1, 0. And then this is it. This is all that I'm requiring for graphing, except you have to show this algebra work. Again, I think it's kind of fun to be doing this algebra work now that we know how to do it and we've practiced it a lot. So that's it for these notes. I'll see you guys next time in class.